There are games you can describe in a single sentence and immediately make someone want to play them. Spellbreak is one of those games. It's basically what would happen if you took a magical MMORPG and mashed it together with a battle royale. If that combination interests you, then you should stick around for the rest of this video. And if it doesn't, I don't really know what to tell you. You're already here, so you might as well stick around too. Now, in most battle royales, the pre-game lobby is just a fashion show where you can pick your cosmetic pretty skins and your pickaxes and whatnot. But here, you don't even make it past the main menu before you realize this isn't like the typical battle royale. While you're waiting for the game to start, the lobby asks you to pick your playstyle right out of the gate. If you want pure aggression, you should go fire. If you want to be a tank, you should go stone. If you want to prioritize movement and displacing the enemy, you should go with ice and wind. And if you want to deal constant damage, you should go lightning. But if for some reason you prefer to control where enemies can and can't go, you should probably pick poison. Now that choice only locks down one of your hands. And as it turns out, you have two of them. And dual wielding magic is just as fun as it sounds. Now whatever you decide to put in your free hand is where the game busts wide open. You're constantly blending conflicting elements, so every fight turns into this chaotic, unscripted mess where elements are actively clashing and blending. Like, if you see an enemy rushing you and they just happen to be in a puddle of water, I'm sure we all know what would happen if you used a lightning spell in that situation. And honestly, I've rewritten this next line more times than I'd like to admit, trying to explain what it feels like when everything finally just clicks. But I can't. If you've played it, you know exactly what I mean. And if you haven't, it's just one of those things you have to experience for yourself. If you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed that nobody is just jogging around in these clips. That's because the world is designed to help you keep your momentum. So instead of just hiding behind walls like some loser, you're sliding down a hill, bouncing over a ridge, and keeping it pushing. Because the second you slow down to a normal pace, you become an incredibly easy target for everyone else. And since staying fast is basically survival, the loot works completely different from other battle royales. You aren't wasting time comparing gun barrels or scopes. You're hunting for amulets to expand your mana bar. You're hunting for belts to absorb a hit while you're moving. You're hunting for boots so your base movement speed isn't trash when your abilities are on cooldown. On top of that, you have runes, which is basically your wild card to aggressively engage an enemy or escape a bad spot. We're talking about items that let you teleport through solid walls, launch yourself into the air like a rocket, or rewind time to snap your health and position back to where you were 4 seconds ago. And trust me, you're gonna need every single one of those get out of jail free cards, because healing itself is its own trap. The game forces you to stand still for a couple seconds, but this game doesn't give you a couple seconds to heal. You have to carve it out yourself. Do you burn through your cooldowns and run away to recover, or do you keep your speed up and hope you can tank the next hit? Everything that keeps you alive costs you resources or time, and you're constantly deciding which one you can afford. And if you somehow aren't dodging fireballs and fighting for your life, the world gives you a different reason to stay absorbed in it. Instead of shifting random buildings around every update, the game drops physical map changes that act like a new chapter of a book. They weave the story straight into the geography and scatter fresh quest lines, interactive characters, and hidden secrets all over the terrain for you to find. It sounds like a dream game, right? You're probably wondering why you've never heard anything about it. You might even be tempted to pause the video right now and go download it. Well, don't bother. You can't. Spellbreak is dead and it's been gone since 2023. You'd think a game that pulled in 5 million players in just 3 weeks would still be around, or at least have gotten more attention, but it quickly ran into two big issues. First of all, the skill gap was insane. New players were getting absolutely vaporized and sent back to the lobby before they even figured out how to hover. They weren't surviving long enough to find out what made the game worth playing. And to be fair, the studio tried to solve it. They introduced a 5-on-5 team mode with respawns. It was a safe place to practice your combinations without losing 10 minutes of your life every time you got sent back to the lobby. But their attempt to fix this accidentally fractured the player base. The veterans simply ignored it, and the new players who actually needed it didn't stick around long enough to cross over. And that leads directly into the second problem. They were running a marathon at a sprinter's pace. As a small studio in a market that was already heavily oversaturated, Spellbreak was fighting for oxygen against multi-billion-dollar titans like Fortnite, Apex, and Warzone, all during the golden age of the genre. The game struggled to build a paying player base when everyone else was already hooked on the industry standard. And with resources drying up, leadership didn't just wait for the doors to close and everyone to be unemployed. They started looking for a new buyer, a studio large enough to absorb their talent and protect their staff from layoffs. And they found that buyer in Blizzard. In June of 2022, the shutdown announcement and the Blizzard acquisition hit the news less than 24 hours apart. And if you're curious why a multi-billion-dollar titan like Blizzard wanted an independent team with a dying player base, you'd have to look at the sheer technological wizardry that was holding Spellbreak together. On paper, a game this chaotic should have been an unreadable disaster. You had a dozen airborne spellcasters, cross-platform play running simultaneously across everything from high-end PCs to handheld Nintendo Switches, and a server constantly calculating physics and colliding elemental hazards. Every single spell was chaos for the engine, but your eyes never felt that stress, because the visual feedback was so clean that you could read a fireball smoke trail. You could track the person hovering above you, and you could see the reaction from the person below you all at the same time, even when a bolt of lightning had to connect across different platforms, or an ice wall had to render a frame late so it would sync up to a player on a Switch. In the middle of absolute madness, you always understood exactly why you lost. The fact that all of that worked and came from such a small studio is a literal miracle. The game engine was pushing the boundaries of what physics-driven combat could do at the time. But unfortunately, Blizzard didn't care about keeping the Battle Royale alive. They only wanted the engineers who found out how to make airborne physics-driven combat work at scale. So the result of the acquisition was brutal and non-negotiable. Spellbreak had to die so that the team could move over. The entire studio was absorbed into the World of Warcraft so that they could build the dragon riding mechanics for the Dragonflight expansion. Holy fuck, that was a tongue twister. The technical wizardry that once held the HoloLands together got redirected to the skies of Azeroth. But instead of instantly flipping the switch, their servers were kept online on life support. This gave the player base roughly 6 months to say goodbye. But in early 2023, the master switch finally flipped. The servers went black and the game officially vanished from every major storefront. But before the studio locked the doors for good, they did something incredibly rare. They released a standalone, self-hostable community version to itch.io. In their own words, in order to help memorialize Spellbreak and allow players to continue to enjoy the HoloLands, we've created a standalone version where players can host their own servers. And because of that gift, the story doesn't completely end here. It takes a little bit of work to set up, but if you want to experience those physics and try those combos for yourself, the game is still out there waiting for you. I'll leave the links to the official itch.io community version in the description below so you could check it out. So yeah, technically the game still exists. The elemental interactions all work exactly the same. Actually, the developers handed over the keys so completely, the fans hosting these private servers are releasing new updates and balance changes on their own standalone versions. So technically the game does exist. But there's a huge difference between a game existing and a game being alive. The HoloLands as a living world has been sealed since 2023. So if you are on PC, you can jump through the hoops, host a server, and still play, but for the vast majority of people who play games, they'll never know the world existed, let alone get access to it. And to be honest, I'm not too upset about how it ended. That's the thing. The studio handled this better than most studios handle anything. They gave people half a year to say goodbye, then took it a step further and handed the keys to the player base. There's really nobody to be angry at. The bitter truth of the situation is that Spellbreak's uniqueness was both its greatest achievement and the thing that made it impossible to sustain at the time. It drew in the people who were ready for it and filtered out everyone who wasn't, so the market never got wide enough to sustain that gap. A niche this specific, built on a skill ceiling so high, with the studio so small holding the engine together, it was always a fragile thing. Some games last way too long, and some games deserve more time than they got. Spellbreak is definitely one of the ones that deserve more time than it got. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below, and if you can, check out those community server links in the description. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.